We want to encourage you to come in and take your seats as we get ready to resume the rest of the program this morning. If you will come in to take your seats. Is this a good height for you? You're going to take it off? Thank you. If you will come in to take your seats, I'll give you 1 minute, and we're going to go ahead and start, especially those of you who are congregating in the back of the room. We will have another break at lunch. We're going to move you deeper into the knowledge of what we're learning about today in human trafficking and sex trafficking. I know there are a lot of people in the rotunda right now. If you guys want to come on in, and we're going to continue the program, you don't want to miss this next presenter. I'm giving them 30 seconds, and I'm going to start. 30 seconds. This is how we operate in television, you know. A lot can happen in 30 seconds. Watch. $15. I feel like my producer. This is what they do to me. Thank you all. What we have next is a survivor account. You'll be hearing from the executive director and founder of Courtney's House, Miss Tina Front. Although there's some information in your program on her background, I want to just give you a few things about who she is and what she does. As the founder and executive director of Courtney's House, Tina Front is a leading figure in the crusade to help children who are sexually exploited for commercial purposes. Since she founded Courtney's House in 2008, her organization has helped more than 500 victims escape from being trafficked and to help them find a new life and start it. She also trains law enforcement and other nonprofit groups to help provide resources to victims. And as we've learned so far through law enforcement, that it is a multifaceted approach to getting people to get their lives back. She's also testified before Congress about her own experiences and the need for greater protection and services for trafficked persons. In December of 2015, Tina was named to the United States Advisory Council on Human Trafficking by President Obama, and she remains on that council in the current administration. Please welcome Tina Front.
Well, hello, everyone. So let me do a few disclaimers. One, I don't stand still very well. So I'll be here. Also, this is a conversation. So I don't do just me talking all the whole time. This is going to be a discussion because I think it's important to have a discussion. So if you have questions, please stop me and ask me. Because if you're like me, then you can't hold your question to the end because you're going to forget it. All right, so it's totally okay. Because guess what? I'm going to ask you questions, too. That's the only way that we learn. So I wanted to talk about that first. Also, the words I'm getting ready to use. So I say survivor. I do not say victim. That's a governmental and a legal thing, not to take it away from them, but I say survivor. Why? And let me explain why I say survivor. We say survivor at Courtney's House because we were surviving on the street. If you don't do a strength-based approach and let us know how we survived to empower us, then we'll stay in a victim's mindset. And we were victims of crime. We was a victim of a crime. How many people in this room want to be a victim? Right. So that's why we use that. The other word that I don't use is rescue. And let me explain why I don't use the word rescue. Because you could rescue a body all day long, except that you got to transition a mind. And when you rescue someone that's good for you, you feel good about it, and that's great. But the problem is this is like domestic violence. And it takes 7 to 8 to 10 times. So if someone tells you they rescued you and you go back, you feel guilty and don't want to reach out to them anymore because you think you let them down. So on services, that's why I don't use the word. I understand why you use it in law enforcement. That's fine. I'm talking about me particularly. So those are the words I'll be using today. Okay? All right. So I want to talk about a few things since we're here. I know that we talk about slavery in reference to sex trafficking and human trafficking. And sometimes, as African Americans, that makes us a little uneasy. So I'm going to explain to you why the rules of trafficking is slavery, the rules. And I don't think people really talk about that. So I'm going to explain what the rules and what I mean when I say the rules of slavery first, before we kind of get into everything. The next thing I'll talk about after that is about what happened to me, but why I created the programs that we currently run on locally and nationwide, and what we do and why I decided to do that. So let's go to slavery for a minute. Before we jump in, we've been using the word trafficking an awful lot. So I have a question for you all. Can a pimp be a trafficker? Pimp? Is a pimp a trafficker? How many people say yes? Pimp, trafficking, same thing. Yes? How many people say no, it's not the same thing? It's okay, raise your hand, you don't know. We're going to learn today. Why not? Pimp, trafficker, everybody in agreement then. You know I can memorize, right? Don't be afraid to put the hand up. So let's talk about it. So for all of you all that said yes, a pimp and a trafficker is the same, tell me why. I just said I memorized quite well. Over here that raised their hand, you want to tell me why? Yes, I'm going to come to you. Yeah, I got this. You got to be recorded. I got it.
Would one reason be because okay, would one reason be is because they are taking you from one point to another point, whether it's in city or out of the city?
Thank you for that comment. Does everybody agree with that comment that said yes, it's the same thing? Okay, and let's talk about that. When we say trafficking, I think we take pimping out the scenario. How many of you all know about pimping? You grew up in the 1970s and remember the black exploitation movies that were based on pimping? Okay, and so I think we separate that and say this is something new. This is not the same thing. No, this is a new name for an old thing. So in my trafficking situation, I'm from the Midwest, and I was trafficked in the South. So Atlanta, Alabama, Mississippi, Tennessee was all the places that I went many moons ago. We won't count the years. It's unimportant. But what is important is that it's still going on. So that same thing is this what we call trafficking. So I don't want anyone to think it's something new, because when I told you pimping, I bet you can think about someone you knew in your neighborhood, somebody in your family that also was caught up in that, but we blamed them instead. And now we have more knowledge too. So I just wanted to have a basis there. And now let's talk about 250 years ago. So 250 years ago, there was an overseer. Y'all remember what the overseer was? The overseer was a slave. Not only was the overseer a slave, but the overseer had a false sense of security. Do you know what that means? They thought they were free, but they weren't. Sometimes they can be on a horse. Sometimes they held a gun and didn't shoot nobody. They didn't do a Django. Nobody left. How can this person that was the overseer be manipulated in a point that had a gun, was not free? Did he have any friends, you think? Did this overseer probably have family that was on the plantation as well? Did people like the overseer? Anybody want to be the overseer, you think? Think about that for a moment. Was there an application for the overseer? Did they fill an application out and say, that's the position I want? Well, then how did they pick the overseer? Think about that for a moment. I need you to really think about that. Do you pick the strongest or the weakest person? How many people say the strongest? How many people say the weakest? And the rest unsure? I told you, I remember. So let's think about that, because that's an interesting question to ask you. So people will immediately say the one that is the most insecure. Well, that's easy. So everybody insecure that they pick? No, that's not how you do it. You pick the strongest. Do you know why? Say it again.
Because he break the rest of them down.
Because you get to the strongest, breaks everybody else down. Because see, let me tell you what happened when the slaves ran. So when the slaves ran and they were singing the songs of freedom to escort everybody out, it was the overseer that would go to the master and say, you know what they singing? They singing about how they about to roll up out of here at 10 o'clock. I'm telling you. So he snitched. He told everybody. Let me explain why he told everybody. Because who do you think got beat when all the slaves ran? Who? The overseer. So he got 3 to 5 slashes, maybe more, in front of everyone. It would be everyone will come around. And this person who's the overseer got beat in front of everyone to break him down, to humiliate him. See, you got to get in somebody's mind first before you manipulate anything. Now let's jump to currently. You all just heard a little bit about what a bottom was. The bottom is the person with the false sense of security that's with the trafficker, because they're not free either. But sometimes they can collect the money. Sometimes they let them sit up front. Sometimes they do have to hit the other girls. But who get beat when the girls leave? The bottom. In front of everybody, they get punished. So now let's go back to another word. Stable. Pimps, and I'm going to use the word pimp because pimp and trafficker is the same. We already agreed on that, correct? Okay, so pimps are also smart in a sense of what they label things as. So do you all know what a stable is? If you were in 1970 movies, they said what a stable was. And that means that pimps title the women, boys and girls, I said boys and girls, that they have, and they call it a stable. What's a stable, y'all? It's animals, correct? All right, let's see where they got that from. Do you know where the slave records were kept? When they were born, where were the slaves' records kept? They were kept in a hospital? No. Where do you think that was? Nobody cheating that runs the museum can answer this. Because they know the answer. So let me tell you this then. The slave records was kept in a stable with the animals, the farm animals. That's mostly where they had them. So that's where their records were kept. Jump to now, where pimps have a stable of women and what they refer to it as. See, I told you that the rules are the same. Have the rules changed? Does anything sound the same? So I don't call it modern day slavery. That's not what I call it because ain't nothing modern about it. It's the same thing. The rules are the same. So when we think about trafficking and then we think about the rules, I also have to let you know this. Who makes the rules, you think, with pimping? Are there rules involved in this? There is. Who makes them? People? Who? So there you go. I heard pimps. Thank you. Let's think about this again. Because people always tell me, well, why don't pimps do this, do that? They make the rules, y'all. This is nothing new. It's easy for me to see because the rules haven't changed. Remember what Grandma used to say? The more time change, what? The more they stay the same. So it's easier to see than you think it is. And just because the internet is here, it didn't really change nothing because the words come back around, the time comes back around, and the rules come back around. So there are different hierarchies in pimping. There is not just one level. That'd be too easy. There's a whole level. So it's important that survivors work with law enforcement because they may not know all the ins and outs because that's the life we had to live. So now I want you to think about something before we really begin. So I'm living on an island. And on my island, this is all I have. All I see is what is around me on my island. Now, people come to me from a different island, and they tell me that this is wrong, and I shouldn't live my life like this. Instead, why don't I come to the other island and come for services and food and housing and be stable on this island? And they told me that they rescued me from this island. Well, bad things was going on the island. The problem is, once again, did my mind change from that? Because when someone manipulates you and puts you in something, you can change your body all day. It's your mind that's still on the island. It's your mind that keeps going back to it because it's all you know. You haven't lived on this other island where people judged you, looked down on you, and said horrible things about you and didn't help you. But then now they're saying, no, come on off this island. This island over here, this is so much better than what you did. So I want you to think about that when we're talking about helping and what help really means and how people are supposed to have their own choices. And I'm going to make a quick reference to this because I do believe in God. So I'm going to make a reference to this. God did something and Jesus did something to me that was amazing, and that is free will. Because we cannot force change, but we can only lead them to the water to get them to what? Make the decision to drink on their own, but not snatch up from the island, but let them see how much they will grow away from it. So with that being said, I work with boys and girls that were sex trafficked. And I want to talk about the statistics of boys right now for a moment, because there aren't any, right? There aren't enough numbers on boys, and the reason why it isn't enough numbers on boys is because not enough people work with boys. So it would not be accurate numbers on how many are out there. But I have a question for you. How many times do you think can boys be sexually abused? They can, can't they? Okay, so why do we think it doesn't happen to them as much then? And I think sometimes we try to say in our head to make it work, well, maybe they define as gay. But I think that's interesting that we do that to males that are sexually abused and put them in a box of defining as something because we don't understand. Because if someone was abused and raped and forced to something, it doesn't mean they made a choice about their sexual identity. So I predominantly at Courtney's house work with boys and girls, and we've always worked with boys and girls. This is nothing new, and it's related to my own trafficking experience because boys and girls were trafficked right around me, so I didn't see a difference. The difference I did see was there are not enough services for boys. There's not enough places. So 85% of my population at Courtney's house is African American. Let you think about that for a minute. The other percentage is Latina. So I work with predominantly Latina and African American. On a national level, the number says 70% are African American. With that being said, my ages at Courtney's house is 11 now to 24, but my average age is 11 to about 17. That's about my age. That's my specialty. I have 3 10-year-olds right now, and that's because I have a grant with the foster care system, the first in the country. So I work with foster care, and they refer them to us as well, and then we work directly with the FBI. So I get about 7 to 8 referrals a week. Just think about that for a moment when we're talking about what a problem is. Most of our youth come this way. So they're in Georgia, they're in Alabama, they get trafficked here. A lot of traffickers own houses in this area because we're thinking small. We're thinking, oh, we saw them at a trap house, they don't have no money. That's not right. Let's think of traffickers when we walk through this for one moment. I need you to think of them as who they really are, marketers. See, traffickers, pimps, are amazing marketers, and they are. And the reason why they're amazing marketers is because they got the whole entire world to believe they didn't exist. So you got to be good at that. Not only that, they put movies out, profited off of it, and still said it didn't exist. People came to me and said, Tina, do you ever think that Snoop Dogg is a pimp? And I said, well, he did like 7 news interviews and said he was. They don't lie about it. He said he was. He even told people where he had girls at. He said it. He did a whole Yahoo piece about it. Then he was on the cover of the magazine and said it again. We make excuses for people. We say, oh, no, they couldn't have possibly really meant that. No, he didn't. He does so many good things. He couldn't possibly. But he said it. So I'm from Chicago, Illinois, so excuse me if I talk a little too fast. Slow me down. And I grew up in Chicago in the projects, but I grew up in foster care. So growing up in foster care, there were only 2 places at the time they really put youth. And this is the time when heroin and the crack epidemic was there. So there were so many kids inside the foster care that were older. They didn't know what to do with them at the time. So they had an amazing idea. Let's do news clips, newspaper and radio. And we will get more foster parents, and we'll change some of the ways we get foster parents. At that time, that's when they changed it and said single people can become foster parents as well. And to really get everyone's attention, they highlighted how much in red you can make every month. Do you think they got a lot of foster kid parents? Now, I told you there were 2 places where most of them came from. That's Cabrini Greens and the Ida B. Well homes, which would be projects. Did these foster parents have other jobs, or was this their income? This is their income. So how many foster kids you think they kept inside their house, making, at that time, $700 to $1,000 if they had mental health or IEP, individual education plan, per child, plus food stamps, Medicaid, when the food stamps used to be orange and blue and green. It's at the National History Museum now. I'm not old. So how many foster kids do you think people had at that time then? There you go, as many as you could have. That's right, so 7, 8, sometimes it was. The requirement was a bed. And whatever reference, but let's talk about the projects for a moment. Did anybody ever watch Good Times in the middle of the night? It's okay, you could tell the truth. And in Good Times, they always had Bookman fixing the elevator. You like, every day the elevator, bro? So in Chicago, that's a true story. However, you all don't know this, but in Chicago was the only housing project in the country that did not sign a maintenance agreement. You can Google this. Let's talk about what that means. Did not sign a maintenance agreement. That means that if it broke, it's broke. Ain't nobody coming to fix it. Right. It means who gonna do it? We not. So that means in my area, gangs were very prevalent in Chicago. Y'all know we don't have gangs, right? Gangs are very prevalent. So who do you think helped us out and fixed stuff for us? There you go. So we had to basically take care of our own neighborhoods and us. Let's go back to this interesting part. Now, case managers are supposed to come visit the youth, correct? How many times do you think the case managers walked up the stairs to the 26th floor? Oh, by the way, when you don't have an elevator, they shut down all the lights in the hallway. Lots of things, lots of activities happen in the hallway. So how many case managers walked up those stairs in the dark? Oh, by the way, because there wasn't enough case managers, they had to get international case managers from other countries. So how many came to Cabrini Greens? There you go. So we actually had to walk downtown to meet our case managers. And I should probably tell you, I entered foster care at 2. And so 2, this is like 4 and 5 and 6, we would walk down. So if anything happened, would any of us talk to our case manager and feel like they had support? Let's talk about the school. What about the school? The school in our area, who also used an international program because they couldn't get enough people to teach in the schools that are by the projects. So with that being said, how many teachers was there after school that we can confide in? None. Well, let's talk about that for a moment. No, at 3 o'clock, they was out of there because a lot of times their cars were on cinder blocks. I did say I grew up in Chicago in the projects. So we didn't have these mechanisms that we have a person that would talk to us or say anything to us. 90% of all of our youth, including myself, was trafficked before their trafficking, was sexually abused before their trafficking situation. So my trafficking situation started at 9. If I told you it started at 9 inside of foster care, who was the trafficker? Foster parents. Remember when I told you boys and girls was with me, so I saw no difference? Did I ever tell anybody? Someone said yes, you would be right. And let me tell you why. See, when something is normalized to you, you don't know to be quiet. Until someone tells you to be quiet, you don't know. Who told me to be quiet? Because no one did anything. You think someone told me to be quiet? Of course they did, the other kids. Because it's all happening to us. They're like, nobody gonna say anything anyway. And that's just the way it is. So when something becomes normalized to you, you know something bad is happening to you. You know that. But you also know that you're going to be the only one taking care of yourself. So I need you to understand that because every survivor I work with have that same ability of taking care of themselves when they're 9 and 10 and 11, which is difficult to be in people's program and trust someone when you've been taking care of yourself and responsible of yourself when nobody else was. So these people did a lot of drugs growing up. And I think another assumption that everybody in their life is on drugs. I've never been on drugs a day in my life because I had a poster board of what drugs look like. It never was sexy to me cleaning up somebody throw up at 5. That wasn't a thing. I'm like, oh, let me go smoke some crack. I don't want to do that. Everyone is different on how they deal with things, everybody, which is why we have a lot of youth with mental health issues and depression. Everyone handles the situation different than the other. So with that being said, the people I loved the most were my foster brothers because they did take care of me and we did take care of each other. So when I was and I was not up for adoption, so I want to make this very clear and say, I was not a youth that was up for adoption. Why do you think I was not up for adoption? Because of my anger, you think? Attitude? Let's talk about that for a moment. which is true. So now I'm very tall. Don't you laugh. But then, before, let's see, I turned 5 feet when I turned 19. Be quiet, I had a party. I was like, I'm not gonna be a midget. And I stopped growing. So before then, I was really small growing up and very tiny growing up. So you think I fought a lot? Yes, everybody quite like, no, girl, yes, I did. The smallest person, they always fight. They're angry just because we short, I don't know. But most of the fights were actually for other people. So I always got into fights that weren't even about me at all. Why do you think that is? Protector, and I really want to make that a point, because actually these are the signs that we give to case managers and stuff. It's always the one that you really think, but she advocate and he advocate for everybody else. You know why? Because we don't think we can save ourselves. We can save other people. See, that's a strength, though. We just don't know it yet. And it's always important to pick out strengths in people. How are we going to get people to achieve and see if we just pointing out the bad stuff in them? But I don't know that's a strength yet. I also didn't know what that saying was, you too smart for your own good. Y'all remember that? There's some people in the room that used to hear this too. I didn't know what that meant. So at this time, I was adopted when I was 13 by my family, who is, the last name is Front. So those are my parents because they adopted me, and they're German. So when they adopted me and nothing bad happened, I don't know why people always assume that, but when they adopted me, what I should have probably had was some culture classes, right? So they were amazing parents. They just didn't know what to do. So do you think when they adopted me that they gave them a class? Right, everyone's like, that didn't happen. So with that being said, one day I'm in the projects, which is fine for a long time. Then they become my foster parents. And then I go to a private school, Montessori. Right, you should laugh. I was like, okay. All right. So I go to Montessori, it was good. It was lots of great reasons. One, they helped me on school a lot. The school system, I will say, from Montessori was a thing I strived in. That was good. There's some rules that people should have told me because I grew up, in the projects. In the projects, the smallest person, if they see the biggest person picks on them or knocks their bag, you punch them in the face. You got to start on the first day so they don't know, no talking, you punch them in the face. That didn't work very well at Montessori. This girl made a comment about my hair, and I smacked her. And so, how many friends do you think I had? Yeah, you don't make friends that way in Montessori. So that was a culture shock for me. So I had no friends. And so because I had no friends, let's talk about my foster brothers. Do you think I was able to still see them and have a relationship with them? So it's been almost 5 years since we found each other. We were actively looking for each other and found each other. What I found out is that they told them that Tina was adopted, and that's it. And then they told my parents because I was very depressed and I missed them. And my parents tried to locate, but they wouldn't give them information. So how do you think that affected me? If that was my family that I created, even though they told me it was not, how do you think that affected me? It did. So I didn't know what depression was, but I was very sad because I missed them very much. And was I making friends in this new world? I was not making friends. So for the first time in my life, I also had a curfew. I've never had a curfew at this point. And let me explain why. Do you think I went to school every day? I did, every day. I washed clothes in the tub for everybody. I cooked standing on a chair to make sure we ate oatmeal. That's not true. Every day, because you could eat at school, and we don't have to worry about it. So we all got ready to go to school. So what kind of job am I already doing for me? Am I already adulting? Right. So because of that, I've never had a curfew because I was always taking care of somebody else. There was no need to have a curfew. What was I doing? Right. But being in my neighborhood, I never left my neighborhood. So my dream was always to have a family. That's what I wanted. So with that being said, having this family is what I really wanted. But then I met this guy. So I met this guy when I was about 13 and a half, and he was 15 years older than me. How old was he? Is that the age? Is that right? Because he's 28 years old. Was that a red flag for me? Why should it have been? Did you just listen to my life? Who took care of people in my neighborhood? Gangbangers. And they did not try to have sex with me. So why would that be a red flag? What if I was always around older people my whole life, which I was? So that situation of them trying to have sex with me and gang members didn't happen to me. So of course I would be trusting to someone and just think it's that. Plus, he didn't try to have sex with me right away at all. Because what he told me was that I was so mature for being 13 and a half, more mature than people his age. Right. But I want y'all to think, a couple years back when you were 13 and 14, just a couple years back. And when you think about those couple years back when you were 13 and 14, you think about the compliment when someone told you, no, you look older. And you're like, I do. No, you don't look older. You're like, I know, I keep telling people. No. So now I think I have a friend. Do my parents know about this friend? And where did I meet him? I met him in a neighborhood. See, that's the thing about traffickers. See, we throw a lot of words around here today, but nobody actually said that maybe traffickers remind them of pedophiles. Because where do they meet people? I met them in my neighborhood. I met them at the McDonald's. This is how our kids meet people at the McDonald's, right by their school bus stop, literally. So do you think that he was watching me? Of course he was, but do I know that? No, and I find that out much later, but I don't know that because I'm not seeing any of these signs. Because when you're 13, this is the real issue about teenagers. Everyone wants to say that people are vulnerable because of this and that. Okay, listen, teenagers are vulnerable. Y'all know why? Because they know everything. They psychic. Anyone ever talk to a teenager? Try to talk to them. I know. I know. You're like, really? Because I don't even know what I'm going to say. So it's easy to manipulate them because they think they know everything. And they think they can get out of any situation ever. And, like I tell all the kids, you can't predict crazy. You can't predict crazy. I tell them all the time, you can't predict crazy? So you thought you were going to get in this car. You can't predict crazy. But you think you do when you're a teenager because you have a smart idea when you're a teenager. You're going to sneak out. You're going to go to the party. You're going to go to Susan's house. And y'all going to go to the party together, 2 14-year-olds, and you'll be perfectly safe. Y'all remember that? I'm going to bring a friend. And that's a teenage mindset. That's why. So now I have this guy. Does my parents know about him? Of course not. No, there's no reason in my head. Think about this. Kids, and I work with teenagers. That's like I dedicate my life to them. And it's hilarious to me how they always think that they can get out of every predicament. Because I thought the same thing. There's no reason to tell anyone anything because it didn't get that bad yet. See, you only tell something when it get real bad, and then you only tell this much to see how much they know, unless it's real bad. And then you tell everything. Depending, you'll keep a couple things. And so because of that, I didn't say anything. Was I coming in on time? Yes, I was. Yep. And actually, he encouraged it. He was like, I don't want you to get in trouble, so let's make sure that you go home on time. So then, now we're starting to, he taught me to do something. What did he just teach me how to do? Lie. He just taught me how to lie. So back then, and if you were a bunch of kids I work with, I would tell you that he gave me an iPhone 4 because that's real old to them, an iPhone 4. But really, he gave me 2 pages. Pages are also at the National History Museum, just putting it so, I don't know. And payphones, whatever. So, because they don't know what a pager is, I had one of the kids like, Miss Teen, I'm going to Google that. Like, forget it. I just don't. iPhone's 4. So he gave me 2 pages, and I wasn't allowed to have pages because my mother said I wasn't a lawyer or a doctor, so I can't have pages. So the corner store of the building we lived in was about 8 houses down was the corner store. You know, I'm from Chicago, so the corner store. And it was about 8 houses down. But what he would ask me to do is to page him and call him as soon as I get there at the phone to make sure that I was okay. Is that controlling? Did I see it as controlling? What did I see it as? There you go. Like, oh my God, you care about me so much. But the signs that we're not going to catch, right? Was that not domestic violence signs as well? So what he told me was, I should go to college. He encouraged me to go. Did I see any red flags? Does this not sound like similar to what pedophiles do? Hello? Similar. Do you think he did this before? Did I know? So he had a family business, and he used to travel all the time to his family business that was in Cleveland, Ohio. Where did I tell you I lived? Right. In Cleveland, Ohio, he had a business. Did I know what that business was? No. Did I ask what that business was? No. So do you think he bought me items? He did. You think I needed those items? Let's talk about that. There are a lot of our youth that parents are amazing, and they have great jobs, and they have nothing to do with them. But that's not the issue. The issue is you want that guy that you like to buy you something. You want to show off and be like, oh, does he care about me? He bought me this. So that part is way more about this person making you feel that they care about you. Because my mom had an addiction. And that addiction was Saks Fifth Avenue and Neiman Marcus. All the man, those are clothing places. They looking at me like, what in the clothing? And so because of that, my mother bought me clothes all the time. The problem is, y'all know what Argyle socks are? Penny loafers with the real pennies. Yeah, I'm gonna take you back. And I thought, you know, if I ruined the shoes, if I ruined them, my mother would get me something different. She just bought me 2 more pairs just in case I ruined them. Because I loved them, I wore the clothes. I didn't complain to them because I felt like that was a small piece to complain about. I hated the clothes. So he bought me Guess jeans, Jordan shoes, and he said, I have a great idea because at Montessori, you don't have to wear a uniform. So he said, I'll pick you up down the street from your house. And then you can change into the clothes so you don't get in trouble. What was he doing? Right. So he's manipulating that. I'm thinking he's helping me out. He's teaching me something. The thing that really drew me to him is that he told me he grew up in foster care. Not only did he grow up in foster care, he was adopted, but his family gave him back after a year. Did this happen? No, y'all, that didn't happen. But what did he just do with my story? He made it his own, but he put a fear. What was the fear part? Because what do you think my fear was? Being abandoned, going back. So he put something in my head I actually didn't even think about. Now I'm like, wait, they can get you back? Like, wait a minute, hold up. So it took me a little over a year to be comfortable with my parents, to not keep a black bag under my bed just in case I had to leave in the middle of the night. My number one fear at first when I met my dad and mom, my dad is white, and I thought I was nervous because I thought all white men slept with kids. That would also be my normalized thing. Of course, my dad was nothing like that, and he taught me lots of boundaries that I didn't know. So I had a lot of fears about it. So putting this doubt in my head made my behavior change at home. Because now I'm like, wait a minute, you can get somebody back? Like, wait, what will happen? So my behavior started to change. Do you think my parents noticed the behavior change? Of course they did. But I'm also 13 turning 14. So what do they think it is? Yeah, exactly, because it's definitely that 13 turning 14 where everything a problem. If you ever raised teenagers like I did, you don't know in the morning if like everything gonna be okay or they gonna be angry and not talk to you. Right? So now I have a friend that they don't know about. And because I'm home on time. And that's the other thing that we need to understand. Lots of our youth, the harder part for our parents is that they were good parents. And they were there, but the trafficker was inside their house, but on a computer. And they never knew about it. So who do you blame as a parent? You blame yourself. So now I have this friend, but I have no other friends. Do I have any other friends? Because I don't have my foster brothers, who are my brothers, my friends, my family. So this guy is just telling me all these awesome things. But he's still, to me, in my head, not telling me anything negative in my head at that time. So let's talk about the time span, because if you know youth and work with youth, then you know that forever is like a week. They knew someone forever and they are in love, honey. Well, 2 months I knew him, and that was my forever. Because I'm like, forever? And then he told me lots of things like, we can get married legally in Ohio. Now, that doesn't make sense, but you couldn't Google it then, and I would have to go to the library and look it up. So I just believed that. I'm like, oh, he wants to marry me. He never inadvertently said anything like this. He just made statements. What was he doing? False promises, right? So with that being said, on my 14th birthday, I had an argument with my parents. And let me explain what the argument was. I had a curfew, and the curfew was I could not go out past 9 p.m. Now, we're adults now, so that sounds like a reasonable request. Does that sound like a reasonable request to someone who never had a curfew ever and always took care of themselves? And so because of that, in my head, I thought that I would leave and come back. And then when I come back, and I came back okay, they would say, oh, you can stay out until midnight, girl, you're fine. And the funnier and sadder part about that statement is that I work with kids. So when we talk about this, each and every one of them go, yup, because if you come back, right. And just think about that, because that's a real child's mindset of, I'm fine. When they see when I come back and I'm okay, I'm going to have this curfew. And so that's what I thought, because he said, and I called him, he told me, I'll pick you up in 15 minutes, don't take anything. So now I got a question for you. Did I run away or was I kidnapped? How many people say run away? Okay. How many people say kidnap? Oh, I still got my maybes, y'all. How many maybes? Stop playing with me. So with that being said, let's talk about that. How old was I? How old was he? Did he call my parents and ask for consent? If I had a social worker, which I did not, did that social worker he called a social worker and asked for consent? So there you go, on the age right there. I can't legally get into the car. There's no consent. I didn't give consent. I can't give consent. So I think that we stop there. And when we think kidnapping, we think a big white van pulled up in the middle of the night. And it was like a Lifetime movie. And Jessica got kidnapped, and her dad went to find her. No. But this is kidnapping, though. And so 100% of all of our youth, this is what happened. But we get penalized for it. But that's what happened. It doesn't come in as kidnapping. But let's keep talking and see if the right questions were asked, what also determined to be the kidnapping. So with that being said, I think I have free will, like teenagers do. I can make my own decision to get into the car. So now we're in a car. And we start to drive, but I noticed that I'm the only person talking. Not like that's not new. But his responses were minimum. He looked really angry. I actually asked to go back home, like when was I going home? Because I did not want to run away. That was not my plan, correct? Was my plan running away? I always wanted a family. That was my plan. I've always been on time. I did not leave. I respected them, didn't like a lot of the rules, but I respected it. So I asked if I can go home, and what he said was, what, you don't think I'm going to take you home? All this stuff that I did for you, you think I'm not going to? I told you I was going to take you home when we done. What did he just do? He spun it a little differently, right? So when people are abused, physically and sexually, who do they blame? So in that situation, who did I blame? Right. So then I said, well, Dad, he has done all this stuff. Oh, that was wrong. I shouldn't have said anything. So when we pulled into the gas station, he got out of the car angry, slammed the door and got out. The car doors appeared to be unlocked. So I went to open it to apologize again because I felt like he was mad at me. I said the car doors appeared to be unlocked, but they were not. So I could not get out the car. What was wrong with the car doors? Thank you for thinking I'm young. Yes, child lock. That wasn't until 1991 when I was mandatory in every state. So it ain't that. We ain't there yet. So what was wrong with the car? He did trick the locks out. So let's talk about that. I don't know that. He comes in, and I, at this time, have definitely been in the car that you had to jiggle the handle to get in, slide down the window and crawl in. So he told me something was wrong with the car. Something's wrong. It gets stuck sometimes. Did I believe that at 14? I'm sorry, just to let you know, it's some adults that would have believed that. So with that being said, I always tell youth this, those butterflies that you get in your stomach when you know something ain't right, and you push it down, and your body's like, girl, get out the car, and your mind like, no, he said it was an accident, and so you listen to your mind and not your body. So now we're on our way to Cleveland, Ohio. He already told me that he had a 6 to 8 bedroom house, a mansion. So I should tell you, I grew up in the projects. So a mansion to me in my head was 4 bedrooms with carpet and a shower. Let me explain. Carpet because projects have hardwood floors and I just didn't want to keep sweeping all the daggone time. A tub and having a shower because y'all know those beautiful clawfoot tubs everybody want? Yeah, I had to stand in line and wait for them to fill up and be number 8. So I always thought rich people had showers and they didn't have to wait for people to take baths. So in my head, that's what I thought. So when we pull up to this house, was it a trap house? I'm sorry, I work with kids. Was it a drug house? Or was it a mansion? How many people say mansion? How many people say drug house? Looked a mess. It was a flop house, look a hot mess. Oh, so he's a pimp. So it was a mansion. Why do we think that? Let's talk about that for a moment. Just because they went to a Super 8 motel, they ain't got no money. Huh, FBI, when y'all take all the money, tell them. Right. No, you don't want your real house taken. So, of course, you have tons of different places. Why would you want they're marketers, people. So a lot of them own businesses. They have cash-ready businesses. So his family, and he came from a family of pimps. So his family owned businesses and houses all over. I told you we worked the South. That was just one house in Cleveland. So let's get to what happened. Have I ever been to Cleveland before? So do you think I knew where I was? We were in a gated community. I don't know where. It was in the middle of the night, dark. I don't remember. And so I tried my best to remember where I was going. But I fell asleep. Who do you think I blamed for that? So when we pull up to the house, there are 4 other girls there and 2 other guys, and nobody looked thrilled to see me. I asked if I can use the phone to call my parents. He told me I could because he was going to take me home in the morning. Was there a phone in the room he took me to? It wasn't a phone in the room that he took me to. So when we go into the room, for a long time, I actually beat myself up for not seeing the deadbolt locks on the bedroom door. Should deadbolt locks be on the bedroom door? So I didn't notice that. So when I go in, the next process is what happens to all of our survivors, and it's called seasoning. So that means that the 2 guys sexually assaulted me, but not him. Why not him? Right. He's supposed to be the savior. And this is important because we talk about this a lot, because this happens to everyone, boys and girls in our program. And we talk about it because sometimes you don't understand or see the setup. In this situation, you can see the setup. I didn't. What I saw was no one ever cared to help me and make sure they protect me, because that's what traffickers say. Y'all know that because you watched movies where they say, I'm protection. We protect them. They're not protecting you. So he put me on his lap right after that and told me how we were a family. How I can go home if I wanted to. He would take me back home. It's just that he wouldn't want them to give me up and not to take care of me anymore, because that's what they're probably going to do. But he wouldn't want me to get me hurt like that. But if that's what I want, he'll take me back. Was that a real choice? What did he just lead with? The fear, thank you, of the parents, right? Not accepting me. What was my number one fear? So that's what they do. They catch your number one fear, and they heighten your number one fear. So that's my fear. Now, do you think that was a reality of my parents? And we'll get to that in a moment. But right now, we're at the beginning stages. So now we learn about lots of rules. That's what happens in the beginning stages. His grandmother is the one that did the rules. So she was a pillar of the church community. I believe she was about 68 to 70 years old. She used to be a nurse because we never went to the hospital. She's the one that passed us up. And she told us things like, you do things for the family. Closed legs don't get fed. Now, if that's coming from a grandmother, another female who's older that you're supposed to respect, who do you listen to? So is this a situation, you think, that I feel that is danger that I need to get out of? Think about that for a moment. To me, at this stage, right now, in this story, do you think I wanted to leave it? It's okay, you don't know the right answer. The answer is yes and no. The answer is yes and no. Because listen to this, and this is the same in domestic violence. People don't leave in the beginning because it didn't get that bad yet. You know that. So when my head is bad, but is it really bad? He just said he was going to protect me. Is it really bad? I can't call, but he said he'll call later, so you're not sure. It's this unsure. And to be honest with you, can a 14-year-old make that decision? I just told you that there were other girls there, right? All under the age of 16. So did his family do this before? So there were other people in his family, his sisters. They owned restaurants, daycares. And let's talk about the daycares they owned. Of course they own daycare because they can get vouchers through the government, right? And then you can do what? Recruit even more because there's a lot of single people trying to raise kids and that you're there. So why would this whole family help with this if they weren't making millions of dollars? Think about that for a moment. Because there are family of pimps. Because it's a whole family that's working on it. So if it's a whole family and you're in it, you start to believe what you're used to. Didn't I have another trafficking situation? Right, did I know that was a trafficking situation? No. So I don't know really what this is yet. So now we're in here, and this house was just more of the setup house, right? Meaning that that's what they came and taught you the rules and what you had to do. Everybody usually works somewhere different. They look at you and see how much money they can get off of you. So at that time, we all had a quota. The quota was $2,000 during Thursday through Sunday, and then $1,000 every day. And then Thursday through Sunday is $2,000, each of us. So I'm not talking about a little bit of money here. And just to let you know, you're going to make that in a couple hours. So they just heat it up. So if you make your quota, do you get to go in and you're done for today? No. So they just increase your quota. But let's talk about that part. But when you increase a quota and the other girls aren't making that, are the other girls in there with you, your friend? No. So everything is built on competition. So when I came in, there was a girl that was the bottom. And she got beat all the time in front of us. So what actually happens is that you say this to yourself, but that's not me. Oh, that's not me. Whatever she did, I'm not going to do. That's not me. And I promise you everybody says that when they're in a life. Because you go, oh, they're doing something bad. I'm not doing that. But let's go back to slavery for a moment. Doesn't that sound real familiar with what we just talked about in the beginning of slavery? How you just can't do the body, but you do a whole mind trick. That one day you can leave, but you can't. I think the thing that upsets you the most is that you're hidden in plain sight. So you're around people. I saw people. I saw parents cover their kids' eyes because of my outfit, but I don't get to pick my outfit. You don't pick anything. There is no control. I did not go and go, oh, this would look real cute with this. Most of the time, we weren't even there. They bought the items for you and told you what you was going to wear. But you're not allowed to keep any of those clothes or items with you. And you're around other people. You're around other girls who have traffickers too. And then you always have people watching you. So what begins to happen is sometimes, for me, definitely, I've always been the person who, when you tell me that I can't do something, better believe it, I'm about to do it right now. Right. So one of the things that I did, and growing up in an environment where people were addicted to drugs and alcohol a lot, I would sneak and make keys. And then I would make these keys and I hide them throughout the house. Well, why did I do that? I was 14. Why did I do that? Say it again. Hold on, we got it all here.
You know what? Making an escape plan.
Think about that for a moment. So it's important because, see, I didn't see my strength. I'm just going to be very honest about that. I didn't see it as its strength. What he told me was I was too smart for my own good. And I didn't understand that. He said it in a negative way. You know, grandmama said it in a negative, positive way. He said it in a negative way. So I didn't see the strength. So at Courtney's house, when we do intakes, that's how I do my intakes. We talk about the strengths because I need to show them how smart they are because they don't believe they are. Lots of people threw things in the bushes, hid stuff over people's houses to try to escape, but we don't find that out. We just talk to them about the victim that they are, but not the strength that they did to even get out of the situation. Because we left a situation that most grown adults wouldn't leave and couldn't leave. So with that being said, I didn't see this as a strength. I didn't see it as a strength because I'm getting beat for it, right? Every time I get caught. Also, other girls are snitching on me. Why do you think that is? Well, I love her. She said, because they're not that smart. They were not ready. They was not ready. And so, and with that being said, to her point, when you're around other people who are scared, you see what I'm saying? And you're coming up with ideas, they're too afraid to do it. So they're going to say something every time. I couldn't blame them, but I did at that time. So one of my favorite things to do always has been reading. And when I lived in the projects, I actually went all the time to the library downtown, and I would stay there. It's like the safest place, learned how to read, loved reading. That was my thing. So I wasn't allowed to read. He banned me on reading. This is real. I wasn't allowed because he said I was too smart, always trying to think of everything. Let's go back to slavery for a moment. Why do you think I wasn't allowed to read? Because why wasn't the slaves allowed to read? Right, there you go. I'm going to get information. There you go. And that was my thing. Also, it really was, I would get a book when he's yelling and screaming and being drunk. I would get a book and go into the story. Like I just felt, that's why I liked reading. I felt like I was in an escape in a whole nother world. So I always read all the time. So now I don't have that escape because I'm not allowed to read. People always ask me what made me leave. And the only answer that I can give anyone, and every survivor knows this answer, is that you get sick and tired of getting sick and tired. That's it. There is not no hidden, you get sick and tired of it. Every day the same thing. You start to think of how to get out of a situation. But it's hard to think how to get out of a situation when you're in a situation where you're not allowed to think. You can't have free thought in this situation because you're going to come up with ideas to leave. So you can't have free thought in this. So you second guess everything you think about. It must be wrong. It must be stupid. Also, people don't call you your name. And let's talk about that. When the first day I was with him, he names you. So every trafficker, every pimp you ever have, and most people don't have just one, you get sold to pimps, and we'll talk about that because this is all about our slavery. And we'll talk about what that means to get sold. But first of all, they rename you. So they pick your name. When I was young, I wanted to change my name. I grew up, like I told you, in foster care, but I was left at Cook County Hospital when I was 2 years old. And the only name that they had on the sign-in sheet, because they didn't have all that cameras and stuff back then, was Tina. The last name was incorrect. They tried to find it, so I don't know who my birth parents are. With that being said, I used to love Fame. Y'all remember Fame? I told my whole age, I'm gonna live forever. And Coco was my favorite person. I was like, Coco gonna be my name. Like, I want Coco, just in real life, not in the pimp life. Like, I just wanted my name to be Coco. So he said, I'm going to name you a name. I said, ooh, can it be Coco? You know, and he said, no, it's going to be Sunshine. And I need you to understand that they name you names each time. Who else named names in slavery? There you go. They renamed you. Every time you have a new pimp, they rename you to something else. So I'll be honest and say a lot of our kids say they forgot how to even spell their own name because you don't get to use it. He's not saying, hey, Tina, you're such a great person. Can you come here? What he calls you is a bitch and a hoe all the time, and everyone else does. All the girls have to refer to you as that. You have to say it. So when we're talking about helping, I think the first thing sometimes we try to do is change someone's language and things. But maybe you have to show them first why it's different and why it was hurtful before you try to get them to change it. Because that's what every day you hear, you're someone else call you. And that's on purpose. Why do you think that is? The values. So think about that, what she's saying for a moment. It's important because then your mindset stays there. You want to leave, but you don't. Because all the negativity, the words, the thoughts inside of who you define as is confusing. So because that's confusing, you don't know. It's not that you don't want to leave. Who do you go to if you wanted to leave? Because you tried lots of different options. So with me, I'm with him for about 1.5 years, and we did travel lots of different states. So we did the South a lot, Atlanta a lot, and I do want to say it took me a really long time to even do speaking engagements in those places. It took me a long time because I was there on such a negative note. I never got to see the positive of the cities and not. So with that being said, we go back to Chicago. Now during this 1.5 years, of course I wanted to leave. A lot of times I wanted to leave. I even thought about calling home, which I did do before. But back then, they had Polaroids. And my mom at the time used to work outside of Chicago. At the time, she worked for IRS for 15 years, and my dad edited history books. And so he showed me a picture of where my mother worked at. And then that's the other thing. So a lot of kids don't return home because they threaten their families, and you think that you're keeping your family safe by not returning home. Because I'm in a child set. I'm in a child mentality. Now let's go to the other misconception. Did I look over the age of 14, you think? Probably looked old for my age, huh? I don't look old for my age now. Then, I wasn't really built. So people always say, do you think these guys really know how old you are? I'm going to tell you the conversation I have on a daily basis with all the kids I work with. When they say, no, they don't really know. I said, baby, when you opened your mouth, they knew. They knew when you opened your mouth. You can't keep the conversation up. I have a 15-year-old, and she was dating a 27-year-old. He was a pimp. He's in jail now. And she said, no, he really thought I was 19. And everyone just... She can't have a conversation without talking about her favorite TV show, which is all cartoons. Right? Which is fine, like totally okay. But just think about that for a moment, because in your head at that age, you remember, not y'all, no nobody in this room, but someone you knew dated someone older. And they knew your real age. So these buyers know your real age. I did have this guy tell me before, not to tell me the age because I look like I could be his granddaughter. So I want to talk about that for a moment. We're concentrating, right, on, and it is abusive, and it's a lot that happens, but we need to concentrate on the other piece of it too. How it makes you deem people. Took me a long time to date. Because you see such a negative note of men. people that were definitely clergy, ministers and preachers. I had to have a whole faith walk back to God. So you see something so destroyed and corrupt that you start to believe that there is no good. Because all you see is negativity. You don't see this good that everyone else. Matter of fact, we call it a whole nother world. It's called square. This is the square world. The square world we call as not living the life that we left. Because that's how traffickers tell you, oh, you're going to live a square world? You're going to be a square. And that's what they tell you. You see how the words define things and keep your mentality there? So now I'm like, I need to get out of this situation. The day before this happened, we went back to Chicago. We went back to Chicago. And why do you think we were gone for a year from Chicago? I didn't get to go. He came back to Chicago, but I didn't get to come. Why do you think that is? Because he was afraid that I was going to run. Why did he wait a whole year then? So there's a word that pimps use, and it's called training. And they say they train you because there really are rules to this. And there are real rules that you really did see in the movies that are 100% real, meaning that if you're out working and you're in a hotel and lots of pimps are at the same hotel, which they usually are, then I'm not allowed to talk to any other pimp. You're not allowed to. Because they can recruit you. If you talk to them, that means all the money I just made, I have to give to him. And he owns me now. That's a real rule. So he owns you. And I said own, because that's what they say. So let's talk about that. Who's upset? Is the pimp mad at me or the pimp mad at him and they're fighting the other pimp? Who's mad? Pimp's mad at me. Why? Who made the rules? Thank you. So why would he be mad at the other guy? Like, no one's going to be mad. I'm going to get in trouble. I'm still going to go to the other guy. But I didn't do the rules correctly. So if you look and have eye contact with another male, they own you. Let me ask you a question. How many of you were raised by people that said you look at me in the eye when you talk? Do you know how difficult it is not to look someone in the eye when you were trained to look someone in the eye? So is that a setup rule? Because it's going to happen. Not only do they do that, but they do something called a pimp circle. So a pimp circle is literally a circle. So they harass you. All the pimps will come up around you, 8 to 10 of them, sometimes 10 to 12, around you in a circle. What you're supposed to do and lean down and not look at them in the eye. So you're trained well, and then your pimp will save you after that, come and get you and say, yeah, I told you she was chained. She with me. I trained her. No, that's a real thing. So how many times, now how fearful is that? Let's talk about this circle. Because they yell, they scream. Sometimes they spit on you because they're trying to get you to react so they can own you. Let's go back to our rules. What does it sound like? Slavery. And that's why I wanted to explain what the rules of slavery are and how they have not changed. And the rules are the same to this. So I'm telling you this to point out a few things. I need you to think about a child to an adult mindset in that. Sometimes we ask, like, why don't they leave? Or what takes so long? And how does it take so long? Well, would 2 months of counseling help me get out this situation when I'm out? 2 months of counseling? But wouldn't it have to be a very specific type of counseling? Correct? I mean, I can have trauma counseling, but would the trauma talk about this? Would this even come out? Think about that for a moment. So with that being said, that night, I did decide to leave. I said, I'm 15, by the way, by now. And I say, you know what? I don't care. Like, I'm going to get out of this. And it's probably one way I'm going to get out of this. And the only way is if I kill him. I got your attention now. So he always slept with guns. He slept with a .22. I had to be in the bed with him all the time. And he would, wherever we were at, whatever hotel, the bed got pushed up against the wall. And I would have to be on the wall side. Why is that the wall side? I had to ask permission to move and get up. I was not allowed to close any door ever. So if I go to the bathroom, whatever, never was allowed to have any door closed. Why do you think I had these specific rules? Say it again.
Afraid you were going to run away.
Right. He also kept saying that statement. Remember that? You too smart for your own good. So did he actually fear me, you think? Like a fear? Right, but I don't see it. Do I see it as a fear? No, I still think I'm stupid, right? So I don't see that as a fear. So he sleeps with his 22, and I'm just going to tell you, his back was turned away from me, and I was sitting up. So I was sitting up, sea salt applesauce. Y'all know sea salt applesauce sitting up? And so I'm sitting up, and I'm looking at him. And he didn't move. He didn't flinch. But what he said was, if you do it, make sure I'm dead, because I'm going to beat you. Did I pull the trigger? No, y'all, that would be a totally different story today. I didn't pull the trigger. FBI like, hold up. No, I never did. So, but he hit me with that pistol. He pistol beat me, and then he broke my arm. So he broke my arm with a bat that night. Then he put my arm in a scarf, and then he put me out to work. And where he put me as a punishment, so I never worked anywhere where I grew up, like no hood areas. I didn't do that. That's not where he put me. But he put me in my neighborhood. Why do you think he put me in my neighborhood that night with a broken arm? There you go, shame. So something happened that rarely happened in Chicago. There was a huge raid, and it was really more for guns and stuff. And it was like the same area where we were out. So the police was there, and I said my real age. This time I didn't lie. I didn't run. I said I was 15. What happened? Were they able to give me a ride home? Because my parents did report me missing. Now remember, there's no Amber Alert back then, right? And I was in a whole nother state. So remember, it was only through that one state back then and not where I was at. So, did the police give me a ride home at that time, call my parents, or was I arrested? I was arrested for prostitution. And think about this for a moment. Did this story that I'm telling you ever came out when I was arrested? It didn't, because who did I blame for this? So I got a charge then. The other charge was abscondence. Did you know you can get a charge? Now we changed that in a lot of states, but you still can in some for abscondence, running away. You know that's a charge. Did y'all know that? Yeah, running away. Running away is a charge. That's why at Courtney's house we never say running away. We say, how many times did you leave home? Because running away, that means you're going to get in trouble. And you're not going to tell me the truth, and you won't hear this story. Because you think you're the one that's going to get in trouble, but I'm in juvenile detention. So now I'm in juvenile detention. Yes, my parents were located. Of course they were. But I got charges now. I picked up 4 charges of assault inside of juvenile detention. Did y'all know that juvenile detention is not safe? In the beginning of working in the anti-trafficking field, lots of people used to tell me years ago how we need to have them safe, so we'll just put them in jail for their safety. And I would go, they got whole documentaries how jail not safe. How you think that's a safe place to put a victim who don't have a charge in jail? So here's the problem about being in jail. How many other people do you think in jail was in there for the same charges for prostitution? Right. So how do you think I got the charges? Because then when they get out, they're trying to recruit you so you can go with their pimp. So I had to fight them. And also, I was the smallest one, so I had a strategic plan. My strategic plan was to hit the biggest person first. So that's an automatic charge, just to let you know. And then I'm small, so I said I'm going to get a chair. And then I'll hit them, and then if I time it right, the guard should come, but sometimes they used to bet on us to see who would win. But depending on, I would see how long it would take them, and then I can get out the situation, not get hit too much. See, it's strategic when you're small, you got to think about it. But it also puts you in one place, which I chose to be in, and that's lockdown, right? Now they put you really by yourself. Now, a lot of people hate being there and being in a room with like nothing, no sheet, no shoes, no nothing, all by themselves, and you're not allowed to read. Not allowed to have anything read. You're supposed to be there. It didn't bother me. So I chose to go there for safety. Did the judge see that, you think? Did they see that on the report? Oh, she probably chose to go for safety reasons. So that didn't look good on my report. I picked up 2 APOs on top of the assault. Do y'all know what APOs are out here? Assault of a police officer. I hit the warden, sorry. So with that being said, did I look like a person that they would believe? But was I keeping myself safe? So I thought. The other thing inside of juvenile detention is that they court mandated me to be in a drug treatment class, even though my urine never came up dirty because I literally didn't even smoke weed. So they believed that everybody was on drugs if you were in a life. That's just what they believed. And it was a lot of it's true because at that time it was predominantly a lot of girls who were Caucasian because of the crack epidemic that was also working. And so I think they believed that based on that knowledge. The problem was 90% of the African-American girls in there was not addicted to drugs. None of them did anything. So if I'm in a class that I'm court mandated to, and part of that court mandated class inside of juvie was that we had to write a letter how we wouldn't let our addiction hurt anybody. See, the issue with that was that I had a deep anger to people who had addictions. I actually had to work on that. Why do you think I had a deep anger for people who had drug addictions? Who raised me? People who are on drugs, and I didn't respect that. And so to put me into something that I was not made me very angry. So I'll tell you what happened next. My parents were able to get me an attorney, so I didn't have a court-appointed attorney, I had an attorney. And because this was my first time, and I had charges that I had to get expunged off my record in Alabama and Mississippi. And the reason I was able to pull it here is because I got charged as 14 and was in an adult jail. And that was the easier thing to approve because I lied about my age and information. So with that being said, to me, the red flag was I was in adult jail in other states at 15. But no one brought that up then. So that was not something that anyone brought up. So with being in this situation, the problem is I didn't say anything else because do I think anyone would have listened to the truth or believed me on the truth? And who would I have told? Is there someone I should have told? Hello? Do you think the police would have asked? I didn't. So the police never interviewed me or anything about prostitution back then. And the charges that I picked up was for assault, trying to protect myself from not going in. So they made an agreement. The agreement was if I agreed to it, to go to a group home and go there, but I had to admit to using drugs to go. So I got a question for you all. How many say, yep, to get out of jail, I would have just did it? And how many people say, nope, I ain't doing it? How many people said, yes, just to get out of jail, I'm going? Yeses? Okay, how many no's? I'm with you. I was so mad about it. I was like, I will not. And think about that for a moment. If I had such a hatred at that particular time for people on drugs, y'all really think I'll be like, I did drugs when I didn't? Even my mom and dad were like, just say you did it so you can come home. So I didn't know that that's the beginning of me being an advocate. I didn't know that yet. But I refused to do it. So God had another plan, because that wasn't going to work out. So what happened at that particular court hearing was that they were going to charge me. I was going to be committed to the juvenile detention until I was 21. How old was I? Yeah, that's real. Yep, I was 15. What were like my crime that I committed for that? Assault and prostitution, right. So with that being said, it ain't look good for the home team. So we were gonna go back to where they're going to send me and go back to court for that. God had a plan. Y'all, I'm not lying to you when I tell you it's sad. This particular judge was a male judge at that time, and he was, I don't know, in his late 60s, but he had a heart attack and passed. So when he passed, I had a new judge. And when we went back to court, She released me, but I was supposed to be on probation until I was 18. My family and I moved to Virginia at that time because my mom got a job with the Department of Defense where she was an auditor. So we moved. So now I got a question for you. Did my trafficking situation stop? Because I moved. I got rescued out the situation. Did it stop? Why not? That mindset. So I'm going to tell you this quickly, and we're going to talk about the end piece to that. So when we move, once again, now we're in Virginia, Alexandria. If y'all ever been to Virginia, another culture shock. So with that being said, yes, I still fought. I didn't know yet. But I was on probation. Do you think that I complied with my probation so that I can get off? Yes, I did. Now, probation, I was doing everything. Well, it was easy. I really didn't do drugs, so that part was easy. But I did learn a skill. I was always a natural-born hustler. So for me, I'm like, okay, if I got to be on probation, at least I'm not in jail. I'll pretend to do the right thing. So I meet these two girls. And I went to T.C. Williams. Both the girls are Caucasian. One girl, her mom's a lawyer. The other girl, dad, worked for the city of Alexandria. And so one day we took fashion class, actually. And one day I'm hanging out with them because my parents kept telling me I need to have friends. So I'm hanging out with them, and we're walking from school because I'll never forget this conversation. And they said to me, Tina, we want to show you what we do for fun and how we get money. Real conversation. So me coming from this, immediately I think pimp. So when she says that, I throw my books down. We're on a main street, like we're outside. I throw my stuff down, I square up. I'm like, I'm not going to no pimp. And they're like, oh my God, you mean like on TV with a big hat and a cane? And I'm like, wait, what? Let me get these books. What y'all made? Right. And she says, no, I don't know what that is, but we just go right after school, right up the street, and this is a suburban area, so this is in the suburbs. And they're like, we go right up the street, and then they began to tell me when the government workers got paid and when construction got paid. And so in my head at first, I'm like, well, this shouldn't sound the same. Like, I'm so confused right now. What are they talking about? And she says, sometimes you don't have to have sex. You just get in the car. They just stop you at the bus stop. You get in. You can get them to take you to get clothes, shoes, and we come in. And so then I said, y'all take my money. And they said, no, I don't take your money. Why would we take your money? Oh, yeah? So you mean there's no pimp? And they're like, what's a pimp? I'm like, oh, wait, you just do this? So I asked the question because it made sense to me that I think a lot of people wouldn't have asked. And I said, well, who taught y'all how to do this? And then they said, well, the girl whose father works for the city of Alexandria at that time, he sexually abused her and would have his family, his friends at work come and have sex with her. The other girl, whose mom's an attorney, uncle, used to watch her. He sexually abused her, and he actually showed her where we were standing on how to work and get money. So I'm telling you, it can happen everywhere, in any community. See, they taught me something. I didn't know what renegading, that you can do this on your own. I had no idea. I didn't know it. So this is my third situation, is it not? What was the first one? Foster care. So family control. What was the second one? Pimp control. And then what was the third one? Trying to do it on your own, which never works, and we're going to say really quickly why it did not work. It worked for like 3 months. You know, things work for a little bit and then it don't. Did we run away? No. This was literally from 3:30 to 8 p.m., right down the street from my house. And we didn't wear anything different because my mom wouldn't let me. So we wore jeans and tennis shoes, like our regular school clothes, nothing different. You stand by the bus stop, and this is probably the scarier part. You don't have to do nothing. These men slow down and ask you for a ride. That's the first thing they ask you. You going somewhere? You need a ride? That's how easy it was. We didn't flag anybody. We weren't putting our behinds in the street. None of these things happened. We stood, and here's the trick, in front of the bus stop. That's it. That's it. And that's national, by the way. This happens everywhere. When you see people at the bus stop, you're like, why are they at the bus stop? The bus stop running 7 hours ago. So this was an easier thing than you thought. We'd get in a car. We got in a car together until about 3 months. So me and one of the girls, the girl Vicky, who mom is a lawyer, were out together. And when we were out together, this guy pulls up in the car. And I had an immediate bad feeling right away. But she got in the car first. And I'm still second guessing me. So I got in the car because what if something happens to Vicky? I want to make sure I protect her. I'm 15. So I get in the car with her, but I don't feel good about it. She's in the front seat, she in the back. I'm not feeling good. The words he's saying is reminding me of a pimp. And he's saying things like this. Y'all been out here, well, y'all need somebody to watch y'all back. When he said that, I said, I want to get out. And she said, did Vicky want to get out? No, Vicky said, oh my God, Tina, stop. He's being so nice. So I said, okay, well, maybe I'm wrong. See, don't we second guess ourselves? Well, maybe I'm wrong. Well, let me see, is she okay? Well, maybe I'm wrong. And then he said, well, I've been watching y'all for a while. Oh, nah. Right? He's been watching us for a while. So then he said, look, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hook y'all up. I'm going to give y'all some money. I'm going to give y'all $1,000. But I'm going to go back to my house. That's where we're going. So we're in Woodbridge. Woodbridge from Alexandria, it's about 45 minutes. There's no bus. There's no train. So if you go out there, you short, because there's no way to get really back unless someone comes to pick you up. So we go out there. Things turn sideways very quick because he sounded like a pimp, and he kept telling me things that I didn't agree. So we got into it to the point where he hit me and knocked me out because I wanted to leave. Did Vicky want to leave yet? So I was able to escape out of the garage. Vicky didn't want to go. First night she meets him, I left. Well, I had to hitchhike. So my parents reported me missing because I had to hitchhike back. I came home in the middle of the night hitchhiking. I looked a mess. And my parents said something to me that I took as wrong, but as parents would say. She said, you don't have to keep doing what you're doing because we're going to take care of you. Why would that statement make me upset? She assumed something that didn't happen. And sometimes as parents, we say the wrong thing without thinking. She didn't mean that statement that way. But that's the way I put it. Also, I just escaped this grown dude, right? But I didn't say anything because the statement that she just made when I had bruises, I lied. I said I fell. I said I was trying to get away. So Vicky stayed in that situation. She came back about a week later, but she left going with him. So it's very difficult when people are like, oh, I just do this on my own. That's how I know in the life to ask. Because in the life, you actually get kidnapped. They take you. That has literally happened to me more than 4 times, where they just take you, pick you up, put you in a trunk. It's a very different thing. Nobody's sugarcoating you up in here. You already know what's going to happen. So we talk so much about what happens in the beginning, but this mindset, this mind is a mindset that I thought I was just going to be in the rest of my life. And that's it. So I did work a lot, try to, on my own a lot. Sometimes pimps force you to go with them. And then you have to pretend like you chose up. And I would. The problem, not the real problem, because it's not a problem. But when they did do that, me, being who I am, took my money with me. That they called their money. In the middle of the night. So I ran. Right? But just listen to this, because did I still think I was smart? No. Right. I didn't think. I thought these are just skills and things that you have to do. See, in this world, that's not the trafficking world, I thought people were smarter. Like, this is this type of smart that I have to be. Not what I went through and how I had to be street smart, and get out of a situation. But if I was not street smart, would I have been able to get out of any of those situations? So to answer your question that you're going to ask me, it took me forever because I had to fight me. Because I'm the one who stood in my way because I couldn't see how smart I was. So it took me a while to even do that and to get to the point of where I had to go to counseling. So once I went to counseling and had to get myself together, I first started at Polaris Project and started up all their direct services and housing programs, and then I started Courtney's House. So everything I do at Courtney's House is built off of everything I'm getting ready to tell you about my whole life. I provide services because there were none for me. So I provide services that would have helped me get out. So I'm lucky to say that foster care in DC, which is the first in this country to ever partner with a nonprofit in a way that they pay for us to have case managers that we call survivor services coordinators. So I never use the word case manager. Why? Right? They sound like, well, they've all had bad experiences with case managers and social workers. The reason why I named it Courtney's House, really my mom named it Courtney's House, but the reason why is this. Because it sounds like someone's name. So when people are there, they're like, oh, I'm at Courtney's house, and it sounds like a friend name. I think sometimes we get selfish and we name programs for us and not for them, because they're not going to refer if you have Angels of Oasis. They may not refer. I mean, it's a great name, love the name. I'm just, kids ain't going to be like, girl, I'm about to go to Angels for Oasis. So with that being said, we have mandated mandatory parent support groups. Foster care now is mandatory for all foster parents and parents, so it's any parent that's not involved in a trafficking situation. So I created that because of my own family. They would have definitely went to counseling and services. But I also created that is for this. Who do you talk to when it's your child that went through it? Talk to your mama that blame you, your auntie, that say they was out of control. It's no one else, and then you think you're alone. You don't have anyone else to talk to about what happened to your child. So that's one reason. The next thing is we have a drop-in center at Courtney's house. Y'all know what a drop-in center is? Well, we're going to talk it out loud. What do you think it is? Thank you. I think people get scared because like it sounds so simple. So you think you can't be? Yep, it's a drop-in center, but I like a mix of names. So let me explain what that means. So I have a real house. And at Courtney's house, we don't call, our survivors are introduced as brothers and sisters. So we say brothers and sisters, and we say we are a family. Why? Because they're looking for a family, and you have to show them what a correct family life is like, because they didn't really have that when they're in the life. So that's one. People then ask me, when do kids come in? So if you work with youth, and you have papers and information that you give your kids, how many of them read it? They don't read it. So all of our kids text us. We have an IG, an Instagram. I work with youth, I'm sorry. Instagram, but it's just for them. And we have a group chat that we chat in all the time. So if you saw me out in the hall on FaceTime, that's them. They call me every 5 minutes. So that's good. So with that being said, that's how they come in. They tell us when they're coming in. We're closed on Fridays because we're open on the weekends. A lot of organizations aren't, so that's always interesting to me because they need a place on the weekend where you can hang out. I like to do counseling, but in a different way. So every day of the week, we have theme days, right? We have a calendar. So one of those, the way we sneak counseling in. So we have licensed therapists at Courtney's house, but we call them one-on-ones. Instead of counseling. We say, did you set up your one-on-ones? The kids do set up their one-on-ones. The reason I was in the hallway is because one of the girls who's 14 told me, just because you gone, Miss Tina, don't mean we can't have my one-on-one. Girl, if you want counseling, I'm going to give it to you. So, and think about that. Them asking for it, because even though they all see a therapist, so all of our kids have trauma needs and see a therapist, but remember the piece about the trafficking that they don't talk to about their therapist? A lot of our kids have been in counseling 4 and 5 years. Their counselor never even knew they were trafficked. No, because there are certain things that you can't explain your own trauma situation if you don't understand your trauma. You can't explain it. You need someone who knows the life to help you bring it out, to talk to you. So you need to work together with the trauma specialists and counseling services. So we do one-on-ones there. I did something different because I noticed that all of our youth will come into the center, but they would not show up for any of their counseling or services. They didn't show up. So what I did was those services come to them at Courtney's house. So their therapist comes to meet with them if that's what they want. Their lawyer, because they have guardian ad litems, they can come to the center and meet with them there. So we made it a one-stop shop. I partner with Children's Hospital now. Children's Hospital is one of the head places where if you're trafficked in our area, D.C., Maryland, and Virginia, that's where they're taken to get screened. So what was happening was the doctors were calling us to follow up. None of the kids went to their follow-up, and even if they had something, they wouldn't go get their prescription. Why do you think the reason was? If they're minors, who do they have to go with? Either their parent or their social worker. Not many people are like, yes, I would love my social worker to sit in a room and talk about that. So that was the real reason why they weren't going. So we made an agreement with the clinic that once a month on Saturdays, they shut the whole clinic down and it's just open for Courtney's house. Because our kids wanted to go, they just wanted us to go with them. So that's another thing that we do with that. We work with the whole team at Courtney's house. All the kids are connected to a team. So in D.C. proper, we sit on the board to see if any child was trafficked. We are able to go through the hotline call. So it's different now. The law passed in D.C., which means that if a child is trafficked, they have to report that to Child and Family Services. It doesn't mean the parent, if the parent wasn't involved in the trafficking, but it does mean that they're going to get services and don't have to go into a court system. Then we have Hope Court. Hope Court. Hope Court was created for commercially sexually exploited youth, so youth who were trafficked. So I'm in a very different place for the statement. Everyone knows it. I'm very honest about it. I don't agree with creating a court system for youth who were trafficked, who are predominantly people of color who don't have charges. I'm just going to say it, but I'm part of Hope Court. And the reason why we're part of Hope Court is because we do have to have services and provisions into place. I love the judge. She already knows. It's like, Tina, go ahead and go on record and say it. So, but we also work with the kids. At least they're putting something in place, and we're able to maneuver that. So a lot of our kids go through Hope Court. I quickly want to talk about our boys because we have a lot. So my population is a unique population. It is severe, mostly severe mental health. So I have a few girls that have schizophrenia. Most of our boys, too, are on the autistic spectrum. Do you all know what the autistic spectrum is? Okay, because I had to learn, and I'll tell you what that means. What it really means is this. They are 1 to 2 points away for being autistic on their score. When you're 1 to 2 points away, that means that you cannot go to special housing. You cannot get special benefits because you are 1 to 2 points away from being autistic. So it means that every program says no to you because you don't meet the mental state, but you can't get into a program. So that is about where our youth fall, especially on the boys' side. So their trafficking situation started more as a child. It came in as sexual abuse, but it was the parents who were trafficking them. And so with that being said, don't forget your missed populations, because what benefits can this boy have if he keeps scoring 1 to 2 points off, but he's autistic, and reads on a kindergarten level, but he's 15? So when we're thinking about help and services, that's why our services are long-term. That's why I didn't put a cap of how long, because it takes stages to help. All our services are free. That's why we contract and help and support, because all my services are free. That means I work a lot to make sure we have free services. But that's also because I want to make sure that everybody can access our services and everybody gets the help and support that they really need. We have a full food program at Courtney's house, so we do meals, 1,500 meals last year. So we do real food. So I like to say this. You know your beautiful cans of foods in your pantry? Don't give them to me. I don't want any cans that's been sitting there for 4 years and you ain't eat them. So what we do, like, you don't even eat that. What we do is teach them, we get the farmer market donates to us. I'm trying to teach them how to eat correctly. The only way that they know how to lose weight is starving themselves, which is what they do when you're in the life. To lose weight, they don't feed you. And so they don't know anything else. So we're trying to teach them healthy eating habits. Because when you get out of the situation, don't you think you eat everything? Because someone capped you on what you're allowed to eat or not. So when it's you, you're like, oh, I want all the Twinkies, like all of them. But then you gain weight, and then you think starving yourself is what you need to do to lose the weight. So for us, we work as a family at Courtney's house. So I just want to end this in saying everything that we do came off of my life, but it's also to support the things that they haven't. The other piece that we do quickly is policy for Courtney's house, but I do want to paint a picture. In our area, there are about 30 to 50 organizations that focus on some type of human trafficking, inside or outside the country, some type. Courtney's house is the only, in the last 10 years, African-American run, survivor run, when 85% of the population is African-American. So I do want you just to think about that and how it affects all of us. Thank you all so much for listening. I really appreciate it.
Ms. Tina Front, thank you for sharing and opening our eyes to what's right in front of us. And thank you for taking your experience and making a difference in so many other lives. Thank you. We're going to have a break, lunchtime, 12:05 to 12:55, and then we're going to come back for labor trafficking. That's the next part of the program. Did I say 12:55? Right, so you come back at 12:55. You got a 50-minute break, and then we'll come back. I didn't know if you had any questions for Tina. I know a lot of you were chiming in.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Yes, please, if you have questions, ask away. We're going to get you a mic. Yes.
Do you take in pregnant females?
Yes, it's not housing. So people do have pregnant females. I will tell you this to answer that. We are currently got our contract expanded, so we are currently working on housing with foster care. So if youth around the country be in foster care, yes. In January, we go 24 hours as a drop-in center, which I'm very excited about. We'll be a 24-hour drop-in center.
Sorry. After they have the children, can they stay there at your facility?
So it's not housing, right? We're a drop-in center. So when we have housing, foster care, so currently right now I'm licensed through foster care. So of course we have people who are pregnant right now. They don't live there. So we help with housing. If they're in foster care, we help because we're part of the foster care agency right now. But we will be able to have 16 beds for girls, 4 beds for boys. And I won't be licensed for if they're pregnant, just because that's the first step of the license for the house. That will be next year. We have a couple more people. You're next.
Would you discuss your funding?
I'm sorry, you have to be on mic.
Oh, would you discuss your funding, please?
My funding? Yes. So I beg appropriately, and we have, well, you were ED, you beg appropriately. We have federal funding as well, foundation funding, individual funding, and to get the federal funding, I had to help change laws to even get it. I'm on the White House Advisory Council, so I'm able to help with put in place what other grants are needed. So that's where, in individual donors, that's where our funding comes from. 500,000. You sound like a funder, Tom. Hey. We'll talk later, Tom. We'll talk later. We got one more question in the back in a green shirt. And you're next. I got you.
The children that come to the drop-in center, are they currently placed in foster homes or group homes?
So I have a mixture. Good question. I have a mixture of youth. Some are in foster care because I have the contract, and then I have youth who are not in foster care. So their parents, even they live with their parents. Most of my youth either live with their parents or they're over 18 and we help them in housing. Hold on.
Do you just have the one facility, or have you taken this as a model to form others?
That's a great question. So actually it is a model. So in Westchester County, New York, they use a piece of our model for the foster care system because they're through the foster care, yes. In Austin, Texas, I'll be helping set up the group home as well, and they'll be using our model, so our model moves. That's a great question.
Do you have certified interpreters for any Spanish-speaking or any other language?
No, I have staff who speak Spanish. Yeah, girl, you know that. So my population, I say that because my population is African American Latina, and I want people to really listen to that, because if it wasn't, then I would be wrong not to have the things in place. I do want to explain my Latina population, though. My Latina population does not define as an immigrant population. None of our youth are over the age of 15 who are Latina, and 100% are MS-13 gang or 18th Street Los Locos.
Can you talk about the percentage of children in foster care who around the country could be victims?
I can't, just because I don't quote numbers that aren't consistent, and those numbers aren't consistent, so I don't want to quote numbers that aren't consistent. I can tell you that foster care does bring a lot, but so does not inside the foster care as well. And then foster care has to go backstory. Backstory is most of the youth we had was placed in foster care because of their child abuse, but it was also trafficking, and they weren't screening for that. So we help screen the really young kids. So right now I have 4 10-year-olds, right? And it was the parent who was trafficking them. So they even call us in with the Children Advocacy Center with the 10-year-olds to determine like trafficking in it. So it needs to be a specialized skill to go backwards and see how many youth are actually being trafficked versus child abuse to get those right statistics.
There are a lot of people in the room I see who are advocates, and so to those people in the room, what's the best thing the community can do to help?
I think there are several things, and one very important thing is to truly understand what trafficking is. And I think today you've learned a lot. Sometimes we get an overview, but we don't understand the trickle down, because it needs to trickle down to go back and educate people about what they're saying. Because everything I talked about today, somebody in this room knows somebody that sounds similar into what I said. And so that's what I think about educating, that we have to use the right words. Everyone wants to educate youth. I'm all for it. But you can't go talking to youth about human trafficking because they know this as pimping. And then you have to make the connection to trafficking. I think we go backwards in it.
How you doing, ma'am? I'm Detective Sims with the Home Police Department, and as someone who actually actively goes out and looks for girls, right, for the prostitution side of it, how can we, or what questions, and maybe something that's a little bit more in depth and something that you can't answer in a few minutes, but somebody who was on that side of it and had the background and the life that you lived up to this point, how can we as law enforcement identify women who in your situation, because when we approach them,
and boys,
correct, the people that's in that situation, how can we identify them when we do interact with them, from whatever methods we use, and whether we have a whole sting operation, whether it's something like what we do like hot calls or whatever, right, or we cold call them from the, how can we identify more in depth as not being, a lot of people that we come in contact with claim to be just a renegade, like you said, right, they're just out there, but right, we know a little bit more about what are things that we need to look for, what are questions we maybe need to ask that maybe identify who those people are.
Okay, so normally when it's law enforcement, I give a very specific type of training, so I'm gonna give you a few things. 100% of all of our youth are not on these online ads. All of them are on Instagram with their pimps, right? All of them. So 100%. So one, we'll talk later about that. I don't want to give away all the secrets here. Questions. So some of the things that we help, so FBI in our area calls us when they have somebody along with their victim assistant advocates, right? And we talk to them. A few things. I like having conversations. And so they're not going to tell you everything just because you're the police, right? So questions more of like, I like to ask, what are some of the ways that you take care of yourself? And that sounds like an interesting question, especially with youth, because what are some of the ways they took care of themselves when they were on the street? And that tells your whole trafficking story. I have never in my life asked anyone, have they ever exchanged money for sex or things and objects for sex? You don't have to ask that. If you start asking questions that they're not screened for, the problem is pimps screen them. So when you ask your questions, they already know where you live, what's the address, they already know it. So I'd like to say, what was the 3 states that you went to before you came here? So you got to ask them stuff that the pimps didn't remember. So every time you go to a new state, you have to remember social security cards and an address for you. The problem is when you're in another state, you don't remember the last 3. And then all your questions are going to start messing up because you don't remember all the information that you have to. We'll talk offset and I'll give you some more. You're welcome.
Okay.
Oh, wait, hold on. We got to get it.
As a mother, how do I protect my son from getting exposed to this or preventing, because I don't want this to happen to my son, but it is that boys do get affected by this. So how do I protect and save him and inform him that this is real, and what do I do?
So that's a good question. I'm going to tell you that a few of the boys that we work with, the person who trafficked them were female. And it was an older person in their 30s, 40s, a neighborhood person that invited them over to the house. I encourage every parent this. You know what you see on your Instagram and on your Facebook is not what they see. These people literally take naked pictures and DM them all the time. So it's really important to talk to them about that and to see what they're saying and seeing, because people message them all the time, all day. It's not like ours, all day long. And they don't know how to say no, or they just ignore it and not say anything to you because they don't know they should. So I don't think enough parents do that. I think sometimes we want to give them freedom, right? And we're like, we don't want to have to go through all of their stuff all the time, but this is what I raised my kids on, and this is what I tell the kids at Courtney's house. So when you walk in this door, we in Russia. It's Russia, because in Russia, as soon as you walk in, we in Russia, because I'm going to monitor everything that you do. I'm up in there. I may pop out the refrigerator like, hey, what you doing? And it's important because we need to keep it safe, so you should have passcodes. And if they keep changing it, then they don't need a phone, but let them keep the phone because it's the only way you're going to track them. You just need to know how to put all the services in place. Did you know that if your child sends a message or even on their phone that you can set it up with your service that you get a copy of the text? And you need to be on that. And I really mean that, because I tell the youth that all the time. And at Courtney's house, like, I'm on their stuff. They've signed into my stuff. I see what they're doing, and I see what they're talking about to help and work through. So that's what I encourage. Have very real. And then teach them how to say no and to tell you when someone reaches out to them so you'll know and that they're not going to get in trouble. Anything else? You had a question.
You said your operating budget right now is $500 a year, $500,000. What is it going to be when you get that new place that you were talking about?
We need both people on the mic, please.
Yeah, got you. Don't get me in trouble. No, just joking. It will be more than that. We'll talk offset about that. Camera's rolling. Any other questions? I don't want to. Oh, good.
Right. Thank you so much. One of the questions I have is, along with the education, the public awareness that we're doing and going through those, how do we begin the conversation to help change the culture of men and women who are the pimps and the traffickers? Because I think unless we can get to that deep level of changing our culture, we're never going to eradicate this crisis.
So do you mean how to reach out to them?
How do we reach out to them or teach them from a young age not to get involved in this? It's not part of their behavior. I know pornography is a big thing that starts that. You know, because a lot of them, the research that I've done shows they start at a young age and are brought up into that. How do we start there to change that culture?
Well, I think the interesting thing about that statement is, like, in my situation and a lot of kids' situation, came from a family of traffickers, right? So the whole family was involved. So I think it's important to, when we're doing education, to understand that, because what do you do when you come educate a class, but 2 of the people inside your class got fathers who are pimps and who's going to go back and say something? So I think it's more of a deeper thing on what we need to put into the education. I have 2 girls whose fathers were pimps, whose father is a pimp. I had to prove that for the court of law, and it's true. And he was a pimp. And in their situation, they were forced to work and be in it. So the harder part for them, because they grew up in a culture of pimps, is understanding. They would be like, oh, there are bad pimps, because my dad was a good pimp. You see that mindset of growing up in it makes you separate because you see this. Even though he was not a good person, that's what they see. But that's an education historically. And I think we have time for one or two more, or one more.
We'll get her and the person in the back.
Okay.
Tell me, it's easy to talk to someone when they have the enough is enough mentality, but how do you talk to someone that they don't realize enough is enough?
See, I love that question. So let me tell you what we do at Courtney's house. There's a few things. People know about treatment plan. Y'all know what a treatment plan is? Treatment plan is like what they do in counseling, treatment. I don't do those. I created this. There's two ways. One is called an exit plan. So at Courtney's house, we focus on the exit plan when they're out. Some of the youth don't understand that. Let me give you a perfect example. I have a 24-hour hotline that all the kids can call when they're in danger. So I teach them when we have someone call. We had a 21-year-old. And she's in our program, and she's in a pimp situation. She left the pimp, got into another situation, and it's a pimp situation. So we worked on an exit plan. This guy puts cameras in the bedroom all over. He has cameras all over the house. So she said, I want to leave, but I need my stuff, because when you leave, you can't take anything with you. So I said, okay, this is what we're going to do. And this is why you need people who actually really understand, because I got to walk her through this plan that better work. And one of the plans was this. So you can wash clothes at Courtney's house. So I told her to pack her clothes, tell them she's washing clothes, because she's on probation. And because of that, she is allowed to come to Courtney's house. We have a confidential location. So we tell him she goes to the courthouse, right? The probation officer's house. We have someone else from the courthouse pick her up to take her to our real location. So he'll never find out where the location is, correct? Because he thinks she has to go to probation. So I had a probation officer make me a letter. So this is all part of our exit plan, that he thinks she's there. That's number one. So she can wash clothes. They do actually have washer and dryers at a probation office downtown. So she can wash clothes. Then we got a fake clothes that we have downstairs, right? And I packed her bag with those clothes, our donation clothes. Why did I do that? Because she got cameras everywhere. So if she came back with no clothes, what's going to happen? So that went great, because he's usually not there when she comes back, because she was able to unpack. So that was one part of our plan of getting everything out. Then we start moving her back to state. So she's originally from New Orleans, actually. And as of last Friday, we sent her back to New Orleans in another program. So with that being said, we were able to get the ticket. We were able not to know. And then she was able to leave. So we work on exit plans. And you may mess up your exit plan. People go back into the life. So our number one motto at Courtney's house is, when you fall, we help you get back up. And that's what we're here for. Because it may not take one. It may take 15, 20 more times. Anything? We had a last question.
So, what happened to the people that were committing the crime against you? That's part A. And then B, do you face a lot of opposition from that world with your program? Are they coming against you in certain ways? And how are you, if that's happening, how are you dealing with that?
Yeah, good questions. Okay, I'm going to do the first part first. So years ago, he was shot and killed. But his whole family, to this day, still pimps. So that's the answer to that one. The second question, well, honey, if I ain't making noise, I ain't doing my job. So yes, to answer that question. There was a big, I'm going to give you almost 2 years now. So I do a lot in Iowa. That was random, but I do. I work with Homeland Security and FBI, and I'm going to talk to you later about some things that we did a different way. And so I do a lot with them in Iowa. Because of that, in Prince George's County almost 2 years ago, I shut down 11 strip clubs. I shut them down because it was trafficking involved, and we did a huge piece, and we were able to shut them down. We shut them down in a different way. I shut the strip clubs down going to the library and looking up all of their licensing requirements. And what I found out in Prince George's County at that time, the licensings that all these strip clubs were actually under a banquet hall. So they had a food license. Seriously, they literally were licensed not under strip clubs, under banquet halls for the last 15 years, and ain't nobody know. Sad eye. So when I found this out, I had to think creatively, like, how are we going to kind of stop and put a hold on this? So then the other part of shutting them down was that they were not where they were supposed to be located. They're supposed to be in a warehouse district. It was only one that was in a warehouse district. So with that being said, when you do a big piece on TV and you shut down 11 strip clubs that was trafficking and you take $100,000 out their pocket a week, they're a little angry. And because they were angry, they were definitely, like, they were doing dumb stuff. They were calling our drop-in center and, like, asking for me and my home address. I was like, they're not even good criminals. Right. So the Iowa thing played because my friends in Iowa had me come out, and I stayed 3 weeks in Iowa while my D.C. peeps in Prince George's County was able to kind of distinguish that. So over the years, yes, we're good at screening, and I train all my staff at Courtney's House. Staff go through a 6-month training because I really think you need to get all this knowledge out my head. You need 6 months. So I just make sure that we have a contingency plan and what our safety plan is. And we do street outreach from 7 a.m. to 3 a.m. in the morning every night, only in pimp-controlled areas, and no one has ever been harassed. The police actually go, if we see any minors, they're there. They're able to take them to our a next step. The next step is that we have a STAT team. So no one gets arrested. They're able to talk with them and connect them to services. Thank you all so much.
Thank you for giving us 2 hours of your 6-month training. We appreciate it, Tina. Okay, it is 12 o'clock, so 12:05, lunch is served, and we'll be back in here at 12:55 to start the next part of the program.